Thank you for joining me once again for another day text. Starting a new week, Monday, February 11th. So I hope you all had an enjoyable and relaxing weekend. We'll get right to the day text here in just a moment. And so just to recap a little bit on the weekend, it was a good open session. I appreciate everybody's participation. I still have at least one more clip regarding the King of the North and the images on the earth involving the eagle and the bear that I believe you see in the continents, along with two fish, two predators fighting over prey. That Jah left the earth, the image in which Jah left the earth after the flood, to indicate the times in which we would be living, and here we are today. So I'm going to put that up sometime this week, and then we'll see what else. It was a good show, so I had a good time, as I said, with everybody. And then this Saturday, I'm planning on doing the Ancient Aliens, the first part. So I look forward to all of you joining me for that show. And all right, we're going to get right to it here. We're still in the book of Hebrews. So these day texts we do every weekday unless otherwise scheduled. And if I'm not able to make it, then I put up a notice that it would be the following day or whichever day it will be next. So continue to monitor the channel so that you're aware of what's happening. Subscribe if you haven't already. That's the best way to get updates and notifications of new videos. So we're working our way through the letter of Hebrews, and we read text groupings from the Great Message translation. And we're in the letter of Hebrews. I'm going to read one verse from chapter 9, verse 27. And then I'm going to jump to chapter 10 and read verses 23 through 25. So we're going to read Hebrews 9, 27, and then Hebrews 10, 23 through 25. If you want to read along, you can read those texts from the Great Message translation in the description for the video that you're watching right now. So that's an easy way you can do it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start with verse 27 of chapter 9, where it reads, "Even as much as it is reserved for mankind to die once only, but after this a judgment." And then jump down to verse 10:23. "We should take hold of the testimony about hope without any hesitation, for the one who promised is trustworthy. We should be interested in each other in order to motivate love and honorable works." Verse 25. "We are not to overlook our meeting together, as some practice. Rather, we are to make people feel better. We are to do this more than ever, as much as possible, as you see the day approaching." So we talk a lot about this, making people feel better, not arguing. Now, of course, in this is a text well known, verse 25 of chapter 10 to many Watchtower associates, because of course the society uses this text to try to motivate people to regularly attend their meetings, and we can understand why. But the text isn't designed to be used as what I'll call a club, figuratively. It's not like they run around clubbing people, but if you don't attend their meetings regularly, you feel like someone's coming after you because they want to know why you don't attend the meetings. Why are you overlooking the gathering together, even though the text here does not say how many times you have to meet together. It just refers to the people who overlook the times when they meet together. So it doesn't put a requirement down as to how many times you have to meet together, and if you don't meet every single one of those times, then there's something wrong with you. That's not what this is talking about at all. In fact, the rest of verse 25 makes it clear that is exactly the opposite of what we're supposed to be using this text and our gathering together for. It says we are to make people feel better. How are you going to make people feel better? If you're criticizing them for missing 1 or 2 meetings of 5 during a week. So you got 5 meetings a week in the Watchtower, or at least you did. Well, let's say a person misses 2 of those meetings. They have family, work, or they're just, it's difficult to make all the meetings. They would see that as an irregular person, or certainly not someone fulfill, you know, that they could be potentially forsaking their gathering, is the way they translate it, or overlooking their meeting together. When in fact, the person may be doing everything they can just to get to those 3 meetings, or even one of their 5. And yet they'll look at the ones they're missing versus the ones they're making. Not everybody. Some people, you know, there are good Watchtower people who get involved and find out more, and so they understand, but still, they would see it as putting the world first on some level. At least that's how it was when I was there. And so it becomes really as a basis for judgment. The exact opposite, I would argue, of what this is supposed to be for. We're supposed to be motivating for love and honorable works. Yet a lot of these Christians and others, Watchtower people, they pretend, you know, people today give Christianity such a bad name because they act in ways that do not involve love or honorable works. Of course, we all make mistakes. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what you are trying to accomplish, what you're setting out to do each day, whether you fail or not. What is your intention, and are you trying to get it right? That's all that matters, because every one of us has to deal with an issue or struggle that is going to at some point cause us a problem. And he said, what do you do then? Do you allow that to derail you completely, or do you get back up, keep going, and continue to motivate love and honorable works? That's what we're told to do. It's not about always trying to please other people. In fact, Paul says in Galatians 1, 9 through 12, you cannot be a man, we all want people to be happy with us, but we cannot run around trying to please everybody, every human, and expect to at the same time be able to please John and Jesus, because humans are going to have different standards for being pleased than John and Jesus, because you can see in this text right here that we're told to motivate each other with love and honorable works, not overlook our meeting, but make people feel better. Yet you have other people who take this text and who use it to make people feel worse. They make them feel worse because they don't make every single one of their meetings. I hope we all get to meet together as often as possible. And if anyone here decides they want to overlook one of our meetings, well, then I hope to motivate you with love and honorable works. But I'm not going to try to motivate you by telling you you're missing our day texts. You know, you missed our day text today. I can see how many people are here and how many subscribe. Not everybody can make these day texts. They're 5 in the morning, 5 a.m. in California. So, but I also know that there are people around the world who need, you know, that time frame, or that it works best overall. So we do what we can. I don't expect everybody to get up when I get up and to always be available. You know, the videos make it easier, but even if there weren't any videos, I cannot expect people to always fit my schedule. Right? We cannot, and same with these other groups. You know, they're expecting everybody to fit their schedule. Even with the Watchtower, they'll have meetings all the way into 9:30 at night. You don't even get home till 10. Well, if you're parents with kids and you've got to get them ready for school, it's possible. I mean, you can do it, but look, every family has to deal with different circumstances. And kids, time, especially late into the evening on a school week, that's a school night, that is very difficult. And so they require quite a bit, I would say. Even though it's for a good cause, I understand John, Jesus, and teaching others, but they then combine it with all kinds of things. And so I think, you know, both the requirement to attend all these meetings in the Watchtower and then the time in which you have to do it, that to me is not an effective schedule or way to really assist people and motivate them with love and honorable works. But they do what they do and they feel it works. So I'm just using it because I have experience with it related to this text, Hebrews 10:25. Now let's get a little bit back, go a little bit earlier, where it talked about how it's reserved for one man to die once, and then the judgment. So, you know, you could use this text also on reincarnation. Some people believe the Bible teaches reincarnation, you know, where you come down multiple times and go through a series of trials and tests. But there's, you know, even though people do claim to have flashbacks and memories of a prior life, it's not verifiable. You know, it's subjective within the person. So no one can look outside and see evidence to corroborate what they're saying that I've seen. And not all of us have this kind of recall to the point where we would be able to even make a decision differently in our new life. But some reincarnationists would say that it's not really like that. that you go through a process of refinement, whether you remember or not. But in our view, the refinement happens while you're alive or when you die, because that's the penalty for whatever sin or condition we were born in. And then after that, it is for God to say whether we had enough life to show him what we were about, or what we did during that life that would indicate to him the type of person we would be apart from our sin. Those are for him and Jesus to decide. We just promote what we believe is correct, and we try to help other people as much as possible. Verse 25 at the end right there, we are to do this more than ever, as much as possible, as you see the day approaching. And whether when the day comes, the day of the final judgment, and John Jesus restore the earth, whether that happens during our life or not, it's approaching. We've only been here several thousand years according to the evidence of existence that we have in metallurgy, writing, astronomy, the things that actually indicate human existence and that we can reliably date more or less. And so whether or not it comes in terms of the end is not the question. The issue is the day is drawing closer. Our day draws closer. We only get a certain amount of life in this world, and Jah manages that amount of life. So as much as you can use your life to motivate people, that's what we should do. We'll sometimes get involved in things that may not be as motivating. Well, then we recognize that. We change the subject or get with a new group if we cannot accomplish anything with certain people, and start motivating again. Love and honorable works, praising Jah, teaching the truth about Jesus from the histories that we have, and until today, the evidence from the time he lived and the records that have been kept. So if we do this, then our judgment will be in Jah's hands, and we will have done what we could do according to our condition. And there's nobody better than the one who has seen everything to decide how we measure up. So we should feel very good that Jah is the one, that Jesus is the appointed judge, that they both love us and helped make us, or they did make us, but we became something a little different. So their desire is very much like a father towards children. This will help us to understand and appreciate their love for us by thinking of them this way, versus just these super powerful beings that are going to judge us and ultimately come down and set things right. That's true, but our view should be of them as a father, and of Jesus as a brother, the Son of God, who came to give his life for us because we were just children who inherited a condition that leads to our death. So they showed great love for us by reaching us even in our condition that we chose, or that our parents chose, but that we inherited. So they understand that it's not something that in our own individual case we can do anything about. We have sinned, so it's appointed for us to die, but we have a means of gaining life again. So that's why we talk about Jesus, because we believe he came down to tell us about the one who can give us life again. And we consider that one the life who gave life to life, that you can show scientifically has always been, because the only way that life could be here now is if life always existed. There's no evidence to show that life could come from anything not living. Therefore, we believe life is eternal, and that the evidence entirely suggests that that eternal life is intelligent. And that's why we call eternal intelligent life God. And we identify that eternal intelligent life as God further as Jah by reading the histories recorded in the Bible and in other ancient cultures that talk about the things that he did and the people that he did them with, like Abraham, Moses, and others. Okay, very good. I think that takes care of today's text. Now, I did want to make one other point. I saw, on the Saturday show, I can't always see all the questions, because even though there wasn't a ton of material, sometimes, like there was a little bit of a discussion about the letter of Jude and the translation I did. I did an EOP translation, and then of course it's on the Great Message at the Christian Witness of Jah discussion forum. But so I start reading some of that to try to see if there's a question Or I saw one question on what grammars I would use beginning and intermediate. But then I noticed, later on, someone was wanting me to answer a question about Moses, and I think it was Benzie Roy. They wanted a question about Moses and how he could have wrote about his own death and yet wrote the book of Moses, the 5 books of Moses. But I didn't see that question until after the show, because I didn't. If you want me to see the questions, I guess this is what I'm getting at. You have to post them more than one time, because I cannot always see each question as they're going to get buried in material, or I may see one thing and then start reading it, and then I can't really get back to it unless you post it again. So, having said that, let me just point out that when we say that Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Bible, that doesn't mean he wrote every letter of it. We believe that the accounts show, and even other cultures, like the Greeks and others, of course, Moses was raised in the Egyptian culture. So Egypt was established after the flood, when those who came with Noah migrated down from eastern Anatolia into the region of Sumer, where you had Nimrod and others established the kingdoms of Babylon, and then further down into Egypt. So all of this knowledge and history was carried with them into Egypt. And all of the beliefs and views of the Egyptians at that time were based on teachings that came from before the flood or after, as they related to Nimrod, Cush, and Semiramis. So Moses knew all of these things. And Abraham was from Ur. Jah made the promises to Abraham and through his children, Jacob and Isaac, that he would bring them forth into the promised land. And Isaac had Joseph. Jacob had Joseph. And so he then became governor of Israel. And then, so when you had Joseph in Egypt, he was there with all of this history and culture back from his forefather Abraham. And so this knowledge and culture that Abraham brought and taught to his sons, Isaac and Jacob, they then continued to teach this knowledge to their children. So Joseph knew about all of these historical events involving the city of Ur and Nimrod and the pre-flood cultures that were carried through to Abraham. And then he ends up in Egypt with all of this knowledge and history, and then, of course, as it's further concentrated there, which then leads to the time of Moses. So Moses had all of this information there in Egypt as a result not only of the migration of peoples after the flood from eastern Anatolia, but also through the involvement of people like Abraham and Joseph, who were used by Jah, and who brought with them information from other cultures like areas in Mesopotamia. So it's important to keep in mind the vast amount of information that was present in Egypt at the time when Moses was raised and then used by Jah. So Moses would have had all of this information regarding the beginning, as it is also preserved in cultures like Mesopotamia. So he would have been able to draw on all of that information and use it as part of the descriptions in Genesis that talk about the creation and the history of humankind after the flood, before the flood, because he was familiar with all of that information as it was contained in Egypt and brought forward from other cultures. So he could have written about all of that, but that doesn't mean, and of course he received the laws from Jah. So whether that doesn't mean that he then had to write the account of his death. Okay, he could have written all of the information that I just described as it pertained to the pre-flood world and then the post-flood world, the Tower of Babel, all of that information, Abraham, and then of course the times in which he lived that involved the Exodus, the laws that Jah gave him. And then others like Joshua or those with him when he died could have simply added the narrative about his death. It's all about history. This isn't about, okay, we start this book here and we have to end it here and you can't do anything more with that book. This is recorded history. So this is what they're writing about in terms of what they see and what they have learned as part of their oral tradition, which was very important back then, but which we can also verify. So it's not like we take it on face value all the time. And these oral traditions are verifiable. They're based on things that actually happened and that we can see most of the time. So the idea that Moses wouldn't have had more than enough information to use to write pretty much most of what we read in Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and Numbers. But that doesn't mean that he wrote every single letter or every single part, and nor does it need to be. Have I ever said that? I think the question was, it was kind of directed at me like I make this argument. Like Moses had to write every single thing in the first 5 books. Where have I said that? Very important for you when you ask someone a question, you take issue with someone, make sure that's their view. I don't even view that Moses wrote every single word of the first 5 books. He probably wrote most of it, because who would have known more than him? As I just said, given the rich history of his upbringing and the things that occurred in Egypt before he was even there, involving people like Joseph and others, and of course Egypt itself being influenced by those who migrated from Eastern Anatolia and brought with them all these legends and teachings. I don't mean legends in terms of not real, I just mean things that they didn't see, but that they heard about and that they could see took place based on the evidence. So I wanted to add that a little bit here at the end because I know it looked like it was an important question, and I can see why, but try not to let people confuse you. Who cares if Moses wrote every single letter or word or sentence in the first 5 books of the Bible? The Bible doesn't say that. I don't say that. It just seems reasonable to conclude that Moses was responsible for the majority of what we read in the first 5 books, known as the Pentateuch. But that doesn't mean he had to. It's really a question of whether or not the information is reliable, whether we're dealing with real, accurate history or not. And so I just wanted to make some points on that there so I didn't leave anybody hanging on Saturday. And of course, I can't get to all the questions, but if you really want me to get to yours in the future, post it more than one time. It'll make it easier for me to see it. And it's not as easy as it might seem. But I'll try to keep the answers a little more brief in the future. But, remember, I was talking about some Trinitarian and then translation issues that were involved a little bit more detail than other questions. So that's kind of why I spent a little more time with them. But in any case, I had a good time. And I hope the information we talked about today was helpful to you. So now I would like you to all motivate yourselves and everybody you see today to love and find works. And I will see you tomorrow for another day text as we work our way through Hebrews.